That was a world of darkness that I don't speak about much, especially publicly. This will be my first time sharing a little bit more about it publicly. But it was a world of darkness, and it was a world of pain and suffering, of slavery, of trafficking. It was a world of masters, handlers, trainers, and madams. And how I entered that world was I was born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and my mom was part of a religious cult system.
Rise up, mind shift, new day, new hustle, street lights, bright ideas, courage through the struggle. Focus on the vision, move smart, stay true. From the city to the boardroom, we breaking through, shift gears, new fears, but we thrive in attention. Turn lessons into action, goals into intention. Don't blink, stay up, every player's precision. Welcome to Mind Shift, where ambition meets the mission.
We're here with Kimberly Ann. She's the founder of Empire of Dreams. Can you tell us a little bit about your origin story?
Yeah, so that was a world of darkness that I don't speak about much, especially publicly. This will be my first time sharing a little bit more about it publicly. But it was a world of darkness, and it was a world of pain and suffering, of slavery, of trafficking. It was a world of masters, handlers, trainers, and madams. And how I entered that world was I was born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and my mom was part of a religious cult system, so much to the point that she had moved to India before I was born. And when she returned and lived in Milwaukee, I was born and integrated right into that cult system, where a child pedophilia ring operated behind the front of an ashram. And so my world from infancy up was one where to create a product that provides a good service to a customer, you have to ensure that they comply, that they don't cry, that there's no resistance, that they do exactly what they're told. And so there are ways to manipulate the psyche of children and to segment and divide them so that they become almost programmable robots that you can control with a stimulus or a cue, with a directive or a word, and then they perform well in the world that you have indoctrinated them into. And so that was my reality, where I experienced every form of torture that you could imagine. Imagine your worst spy movie where the traitors captured and then they're subjected to torture to get secrets out of them. That was my world. The best analogy that I have to describe it would be for those who've watched The Bourne Identity with Jason Bourne, and the segmentation and divide of his psyche through dissociation so that he could perform his role as a spy with no remorse, with no emotion, with no thought process. And then also Bucky from the Avengers, the Winter Soldier. There's a scene where he's strapped to a chair, and when a certain sequence of numbers are spoken out, he loses all autonomy of the function of his mind, will, emotions, and body. And that would be what was subjected to me through repetitive ritual abuse, training, programming, also that I could be profitable to those who oversaw the pedophilia ring. So that was the world I was raised in. And then there was no construct of safety outside of that as well. My home environment was not a safe place either, where repetitive abuse of many forms continued in that household as well. So just the normal type of abuse replayed with, an alcoholic father, very dysfunctional home life, and repetitive abuse of all forms in the home level as well. So that was the world that I was raised in.
So when did life stop feeling safe for you as a kid?
It was never safe. I had no concept of what safety was. There was no safe place. There was no safe person. I knew what it was to suffer alone and be silenced and to not have a voice, because in that world, there's risk and reward, threat and reprieve. So you're constantly threatened that if you ever speak out, if you ever resist, if you ever say no, if anyone ever finds out, you're punished, and you are punished repetitively in that world, and then you watch others be punished. And so you learn to do what you're told and to almost be a robot. So there was no construct of safety. I have one safe individual in my childhood. I had an uncle who had moved to Milwaukee. and attached very heavily to him in a very healthy, life-giving way, because it was a safe person. And so the few memories that I have from my childhood, I remember him in the sense of safety I had, but otherwise outside of that, there was no safety.
Can you tell me about how you were living a double life? Because, I was under the assumption of when I hear human trafficking, that means you're taken away from your family and you never see them again. But you said it was the complete opposite. You're actually with your family and you were going to school, but you were also living this undercover life that nobody else at school or at church knew about.
Yeah. Yeah, so in those worlds and in those systems, you have to present a facade of normalcy. And so in the ashram, parents were separated from their children always. And so I was put in a childcare setting. And there was easy access to me because we had been so ingrained. My mother had been part of that system for over 15 years. And so there was easy access to me, repetitive, consistent, very rhythmic access to me as a child. And natural dissociative trauma responses are that a child will almost fragment and hold the trauma experience or memory in different subset parts of their psyche. So the sensory experience, the fear, the anger, the sexualization, all kind of get segmented out so that they continue to live a mostly normal life. And then in my case, through the very engineered, strategic dismantling of who I was as a person, there was actually programmed parts of me that operated within the pedophilia ring. And then when I left, I was a different Kimberly. So literally almost a program loop, turn on, turn off button. And so who I was outside of that world was someone completely detached from what I was experienced the moment I arrived to that ashram. And through the terror of what I experienced, you're subdivided. There's kind of no other way to put it. So that I could continue to live a normal life, that in the eyes of the rest of the world, and then become who I was supposed to be and who I was programmed to be when I entered that kind of hidden world. And then that carried on to the rest of my life, where the rest of my life, I continued to play out the living of a double life autonomously, almost not even recognizing that this wasn't normal, this wasn't healthy, this wasn't okay, because I was so subdivided at that point.
Man, like when you think about it, how I know you said it was the program was autonomously, but has there ever been a point where your other life almost bled into your normal life?
Yeah, I mean, many times. And especially as I began kind of my breaking point to my healing journey. But when I was young, I had my first break where the worlds collided when I was 14, where my system kind of imploded. There was a significant event that happened, and I could no longer hold together this facade, this normal presenting Kimberly with all the pain that was housed inside of me internally. And at 14, it was like, I just remember the day I woke up, and it was like, it's why I relate to the born identity so well, I woke up and it was almost like a blank page where I could not remember anything that happened before 14. I had no grasp of a memory, no construct of anything in my life that happened in my home. And then I was filled with terror, anger, self-hatred, despair, hopelessness. It was literally like I woke up and it was just my system failed. I got thrown back into my trauma response, and I was trapped there. I was trapped in the world that I had come from. And at that point, that's when, substance use and addiction and self-harm and a first suicide attempt all came to the forefront, because I couldn't keep this pretense that my world was okay anymore. I couldn't hide the internal suffering I was in. And I just basically fell apart at that point. And then that's the rest of my life is filled with a forward-facing Kimberly who presents very well, who loves Jesus, who leads ministries and nonprofits and designs programs and coaches and counsels, leads endless women's groups, runs micro churches, but then has these subsequent breakdowns that I keep very hidden from the rest of the world, where I'm no longer able to manage the pain and the manner in which I was shattered, and had breakdowns from that point on pretty consistently.
So what age did you come out of trafficking?
So I came out in my early teens. When I was just a little bit younger, my mom and my whole family had actually left that system, had left the ashram. All the shrines in our house were taken down. Everything was thrown out. My mom cut off most access to everybody, still unaware what was really happening to me. She was aware of things that were happening in my home, but not necessarily aware of the things that went on in the ashram. But there was still consistent access to me through relationships up for a window of time until right before I was 14.
When you were finally physically free, what did freedom actually look like for you?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I did not find freedom until only recently. The severity of the things that I experienced, the psychological hardwiring, the terror that was trapped in my body, the programming that I was indoctrinated with, it felt that no matter how far removed I got from being physically trapped, I couldn't escape what was inside of me. And my kind of analogy that I recognized was that, like when you take, like, something's frozen. So for my analogy is like if it was, over a decade, it was almost like I was in a prison, like, or a freezer of severe suffering. And then you come out, and now it's like I'm so removed from it. And in my present, there's the sun shining and the warmth, and imagine like the most beautiful beach scenery in front of you. But when something is frozen and then it thaws, it may on the outside look like it's warm and it's like even ready to eat if you think about a frozen meal, but inside it's frozen solid. And that was kind of how just my heart has been since then, like the depth of the severity of what I survived on a repetitive nature. It was just almost to this point where can this ever be just like ripped from inside of me? Can I ever be at a moment where there's peace in my body, where I don't feel the terror of what I was subjected to, where I don't have to navigate these belief systems and put myself back together almost. So there was no sense of freedom for many, many, many years. There was pretense, there was performance, there was living to keep everyone else safe. It was like I was driven that no one else should ever suffer, no one else should ever be bound, no one else should ever be trapped. So I spent years and years of my life doing ministry, working with family units, working in community development, designing systems and models to see systematic, sustainable transformation to systemic injustices, all because I couldn't get free myself. I didn't know how to get free. And if I just kept the energy up of trying to ensure that others weren't trapped, then maybe one day I'd feel okay. And so it wasn't as far as removed as I was in a physical context. Internally, I was still just as trapped and in bondage as when I was there because of what was done to me.
How are you pulling it off? Dealing with what you just described as, all the pain and suffering that's like locked away inside you, but still being there for other people.
Yeah, so there's kind of two sides of that. There's me walking out healing and wholeness now in that context, and then there's most of my life with the pretense and performance. So how I pulled it off, well, I was divided. It was literally as though different people operated through like one whole Kimberly. It's called dissociative identity disorder. And it is a natural trauma response that got hardwired into our system so we can survive unbearable scenarios. And then it was also programmed within me in a very sadistic manner as a child as well. And so it was almost complete divide of different Kimberlys living out present day life. And so it was just all hidden in little compartments of an internal landscape of little me's who experienced severe suffering and an adult me who was completely removed. And from that place, I had the heart, like my heart has never changed. That's one thing I recognized a number of years ago, was like you could control my mind, you could govern my body, my emotions could be manipulated, my will, all of that, like, was literally in the hand of another human, but no one could ever control my heart. No one could ever take it from me. And in the darkest places of the earth, love grew. And that love carried across all the spectrum of who I am as a person. So this deep love where, in what I grew up in, constantly sacrificing myself to save others, constantly sacrificing myself to prevent harm to other children. So that was just ingrained and wired in me. Somehow love grew for just people in general, for them to be free, for them to be whole, for them to be alive. But it was just very divided. Now, today, as someone who, I won't say I've arrived. I don't know if we ever arrive. But as someone who is walking out wholeness and healing, mostly integrated in every aspect of my life, how do I keep doing what I'm doing? It is really, I don't even want to say the word hard. I'm not even tired anymore. I'm not discouraged. I have so much hope for life. I know my purpose. I know my calling. I'm grateful for what God's done in my life. But it's just the resilience to wake up every day and lead an organization, lead a team, serve an entire community, craft pathways for people to thrive. Bearing it's like the sorrow and grief may probably never go away. And the effects are longstanding. The strategies and practices I have to moment by moment implement, the governance of my emotions, the truths I have to speak and declare, the panic I have to master because panic just resides in my body, the health effects, like I have lupus, I have constant health issues from the repetitive things that my body was subjected to. There's so much that moment by moment, I'm going to enter a room, you're going to see me bubbly, excited, speaking on stage, inspiring. I'm super passionate. I'm like an Energizer buddy on steroids. But just beneath that is a sorrow and a soberness that I think is just, it'll probably never go away. But there's a gratefulness of what I've overcome and who I am today and what I survived, and that there is a way for anyone else. Like if I can come from the darkness and the despair and the self-sabotage and the ways I gave up on myself, and I'm still here, like there's a way for everyone else, and that drives me, motivates me, and keeps me going. But it doesn't make it easy. It's heavy. It's heavy. That's probably the word. It's really heavy.
So tell me about the strategies that you use to, kind of deal with what you have going on.
Yeah, so that was a really, really long journey. And there's a few specific ones that have brought me to where I am today. The first thing was all of us, regardless of what we've gone through, regardless of our upbringing or experience, we develop systems to survive, ways to be safe and to meet our core needs, which are love, comfort, belonging, acceptance, pleasure. We all design those. And a lot of times as children, we do what works and we don't realize it's not healthy and it's actually harmful. And then we become adults and we continue to play out those patterns and those behaviors to keep the world happy, to avoid harm, to avoid threat, to get what we need. And so a lot of my work was recognizing the entire way that I learned to survive that was good at one point in time. I'm still here. And then how do I actually now learn pathways to thrive? And there was intensive work in me dismantling, first being aware of every unhealthy wiring of what I was raised in, pattern of behavior, the belief that it originated, that upheld that behavior and where it originated in my trauma story. And then seeing a new truth, a new lens to view the world, a new pattern of behavior to integrate. That was a better way. There was a way to thrive, not survive. But it took a long time to get there. My first step actually in that healing journey, or the first strategy, was letting people into my story. I was, as much as I was there for everyone else. Again, I'm coaching and counseling. I'm leading women's ministries. No one knew what was going on in my life internally. I was afraid of being disqualified. I was afraid of letting others down because I'm leading them. I'm walking them through their addiction. I'm walking them through their domestic violence. I'm walking them through their anxiety and panic. Like, if they find out I'm doing, I'm wrestling with the same things, it almost was like there's no hope to trust in, but I wasn't supposed to be their hope. Their hope was supposed to be Jesus anyways. So the first thing was letting people into my story. And I had a breaking point a number of years ago where, kind of similar to 14, just my system imploded. And I broke, and I finally, for the first time in literally my entire life, let people into my story to see the beauty of who I am and the brokenness. Because it's so easy to display to the world the strong things about us and the good things and the beauty and how amazing we are and all our achievements. But it's really hard to let people see we're fucked up.
That's facts.
Right.
So tell me about the decision that you made that day that you imploded. What was the conversation in your head, like talking to yourself? Basically, like what I'm trying to say is, what was the conversation you were having with yourself to be okay with letting other people in and hearing your story?
Yeah, well, there wasn't much of a decision because I was definitely under the influence of a number of things at the moment and more at a literal breaking point. I was the overwhelm of the terror, because when you have a flashback, for those who know trauma, it's as though you're reliving it again. There's no world outside of what you're living. You are right back in what happened to you, full force. And you are back to being that little child with no power. So for me, I'm reliving floods of flashbacks in a way that I actually never had prior to that because of some things that have happened in my present. And all I know is to make it go away. All I know is to run. All I know is to numb. All I know is to escape. And so I was at a point of, I can't actually live anymore like this. I can't make it go away. I don't have the strength to put on the facade. I don't have the strength to put on the performance. I don't care if I lose everything. I just don't care anymore because I don't even want to be here. And so in that breaking moment, it was like, I have to have help. I need people. I need someone to help me. And so I just broke. And I had a recent suicide attempt again. And so just knowing that I will not be here. I don't want to be here. I can't make my past go away. I can't figure out how to be free. I need help. And so I opened up to a coach. His name's Mark Jackson. And it was the first time in my life someone saw me, not just in my strength, but in that brokenness. And he entered my story and I wasn't disqualified. That was huge for me, that someone could see all the parts of me and be like, damn, Kim, you're the shit. In so many areas of your life, you're also really fucked up. But I'm going to work with you until we get you to the whole of you living out the truth of who you really are. Because there's a truth of who you really are that you've never lived out yet, just parts of me had lived it out. And so he entered my story, and from there, I had a whole team of people. I had 4 to 5 people that were my support team. I'm super spoiled with love. They became my support system, and they each had their own role in my healing and wholeness journey. I was literally surrounded and supported. I was no longer isolated and alone. And from what I came from, my whole world was you were alone in suffering. And now I was no longer alone in suffering. I was with people, and they were in my story, and they saw me, they knew me, they believed in me, they spoke life, identity, and truth into me. So then as I continued to do my own healing journey, I had people reinforcing that. So beyond the people, I had a very strong faith journey. That's actually the only reason I'm here today. And why I maintain such high functioning most of my life, because I had such a solid relationship with Jesus, learned so many strategies from him for how to maintain stability over my life. But there was this piece I was missing, which was people. And so we can walk out all the strategies all day long, but being alone in it, you need accountability. You need transparency. When you give up on yourself, you need someone to still believe in you. And that breaking point allowed people to finally come in. I wasn't alone. And then it propelled me to continue to do the deep heart work I was already doing. And that's like really like my whole journey has been this deep, deep work of diving into every trauma response, every belief system, every behavior, every program loop, and learning a new way to thrive, not survive, a new belief system. And it's such deep work because you have to see it. Like someone can't just be like, "You're safe now, Kim. You're in the present. You have worth. You have a voice." Like you actually have to see it, and to see something, you have to experience it. And then when you experience it, and a lot of mine was through visualization, through prayer, I would see and experience it. Then I would affirm it and agree with that, what I saw, like a truth. Let's say, you can move. That sounds like a simple truth to a lot of people. That was not a truth to me. So, Kim, you can move. So I see a visualization of it, then I speak it out and I agree with that. I can move my body. I can move my hands. I can get up when I want. I can rise. I can live the life I want. So I speak it and I make declarations around it. And then I implement habits and routines that govern kind of a structure of my life that then agree and align with this truth I've received. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And I had to do this over and over and over and over again with every traumatic part of my soul, every trauma memory, every negative belief system, just over and over again. And then I had people help reinforce the truths I was seeing, believing, and agreeing with.
So can you tell me what happened the day you actually broke down? Like, what was the cause of that breakdown?
Of the breakdown? Well, so deeper level of my presentation and facade was, and again, this wasn't even something I was fully aware I was doing. It was very subconscious, the living of a duality of lives, because it was just hardwired into me as a child. You're not even aware that you are different people at different times. But from being raised in severe abuse, I then recreated my abuse in my marriage. And so I was married for 15 years and very abusive the whole marriage. And we did ministry together. We led house churches together. We led programs together, and I kept everything hidden. And I didn't even know anything different because that's what I was raised in. The people who love you hurt you, and you just hide it. And you hope and imagine that one day it'll be different. And it wasn't just like every day he was horrible. It was definitely cycled loops, and he wrestles with addiction and amongst other things. But I finally hit a point where there was a threat of harm to my life that was very similar to something I experienced as a child. And I just got flooded right back to the past and to a place of despair. And when I hit despair, it's a really bad place to be because in despair, there's no way out. And as a child, I always imagine there's someone opening a door, someone coming to rescue me, someone saving me. Like I imagine over and over and over again. And there was this seed of hope that someday I'll be saved. And then when that broke, I broke. And if there's no way to escape, you just make yourself go away. That is the escape, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so that situation with him, I was thrown back to places I had tried my whole life to run from and pretend weren't there. It's rehappening in my present, just being trapped in just, again, severe suffering. I'm hiding from the world and just felt like there's no way out. And not realizing I could just make him leave. I could just leave with my kids. I could just walk away. I could use my voice and say no. And so that was really the moment when that broke me. It was this situation that had happened with my kid's dad that unlocked, because for up to that point, I had, for the most part, been managing my life really well. And then I crumbled. And I crumbled because a lot of my faith in God got questioned. That you would allow me to go right back into this. Like, you're the God who's supposed to keep me safe. You lead me perfectly. But because of how shattered I was, because of how dissociated I was, because of how afraid I was and longing to be loved and only seeing love as something and someone that hurts you, I just put myself right back to where I started. And that broke me. And then the suicidality. And then if I'm going to live, I can't do this alone and I need help. And that really was the catalyst for me being where I am now. I won't say I'm fully there, but I am thriving from a place of wholeness and health and integration that I never thought was possible. Like, I just didn't. And I was walking people I was coaching and counseling for so many years. I was preaching on healing. I was preaching and teaching everything I didn't believe was possible for me.
Mm.
That's what I was. I could talk about identity and worth and value because God gave me all these like beautiful little teachings and lessons that I just couldn't receive in the depth of who I was. So I was just speaking it so someone else could have what I didn't believe I could have. And now I've actually received within the core of me that I'm loved and that I have power and that there's a hope for my future and that I'm wanted, that I'm meant to be cherished. And so, yeah, it's been a beautiful journey of him putting back together what I never thought could be put back together, him entering the darkest places of my soul, the darkest moments of suffering, and being there with me in it. Because that's the most profound thing. We need people with us, and those darkest places, him entering and being with me, and me seeing how cherished and loved I really am.
You mentioned that you did a suicide attempt. How close were you to actually like unaliving yourself?
Yeah, so I had 2 suicide attempts, one at 14 and one as an older adult. And the one where I was 14, I should not be here today. I had taken so many narcotics that there's a very slim chance of me being alive. And I remember I drifted off and passed out, and then I woke up. And I remember being angry at God that I was still alive and amazed that I was still alive. And I remember I heard him tell me, "Kimberly, your life is mine, and not even you can take it from my hand." And that was such a powerful and significant moment for me because in the cult, one of the primary words spoken over me was mine. That my master told me, I was his. I belonged to him. You're mine. I even have it tattooed on my wrist. I am mine because no one owns me. I belong to me. And so for God to say, "You're mine, no one can take you from my hand, not even you, not even me," was profound and powerful. And that was one of many moments when God spoke purpose of identity into me. And I knew what drove me so many years was, I remember him telling me, "I'm sending you to the darkest places of the earth to bring my light." And that was a purpose. That gave me a motivation to live. And that's what kept me from my wrestles with suicide most of my life. But then as an adult, I had another attempt. And I ended up in the hospital to show a glimpse of how severed and divided I was, how good my pretense and performance was 2 weeks after that, I preached a sermon on healing at a church. And walked an entire congregation through the brokenness of our souls and the compartments of our trauma and how, how to process those and walk to freedom, be it I was still trapped in it myself. And so I have lots of compassion for people who wrestle with suicide because out of everything I wrestled with, the numbing and the running and the self-hatred and the codependency and the domestic violence, the primary thing was not knowing how to wake up every day and choose to live. And I remember getting to the point where almost like the greatest sacrifice was, I'm going to choose to live for others. I didn't know how to choose to live for myself. And that's where I really needed to get, where I have enough worth and value and love for myself that's enough to keep me alive. But I didn't have that. And so I was there. I was in an ambulance. I was in a hospital. No one knew. I hid it really well. And I think today this might actually make me cry. I remember the day I when I even made a post about it a number of years ago on social media. Looking back, we look back over the year and, our growth and, where we came from. And I just remember sitting there and going, I wake up and I want to be alive. And it doesn't mean life is easy. It's really hard. The things I have to navigate on a daily basis from what I experienced, what's stored in my body, my health, poverty, leading initiatives and movements. I mean, life is hard, but I remember sitting there like, I want to be alive. Like, I want to be here. And that moment, for those who know like depression or despair or heaviness, I know so many humans or people wrestle with depression and just like how heavy it is on you, like waking up and wanting to be here and being content with my story as well. That was a big part of it. Being content with what I came from and what I survived, not hating myself for where I came from, not hating myself for my response to my trauma, because that was a big wrestle as well. You have shame for what you lived in, shame for what you were forced to do, shame for the people you hurt, and then shame for how you responded to it. And getting to a place where all that was absolved and I wanted to be here was another moment I never thought I would have.
So you said you opened up to a small group about everything you were going through. What did it feel like saying everything you were dealing with out loud for the first time?
So that was definitely a progressive opening up. Yeah, I remember there was times where I would just open up more and more and more. I remember working with a friend of mine who was also a peer support specialist, one of my main support people. And a year and a half in, I finally shared the main thing I was struggling with. And he just looked at me. He's like, why did you not say that a year and a half ago? But there were so many, me learning to trust, me learning to let people see me. And again, it was indoctrinated in me. If you ever tell anyone, there's all these reprisals, there's all these punishments. And even though I know logically those aren't true, everything in me was trapped in a shell where I couldn't put words to my mouth, on top of the fear of disqualification and the fear of people thinking I'm a hypocrite and people not understanding trauma, not understanding we can be amazing, incredible people with a whole lot of brokenness. And it's held in compartments of us. That's why people get triggered and all of a sudden they don't act like their true selves because they got a lovely little trauma response. But yeah, it was a progressive opening up. Definitely in the beginning, vomited all over Mark Jackson, definitely most amazing transformational life coach in the universe, and was like, here. And I think what was so astounding was I wasn't disqualified. I wasn't rejected. I was just received and I was loved and I was believed in. And like nothing I said could move my support system. Like nothing, no matter how much like grotesque stories of my life and memories, responses. They were just, nod, smile, love me. Okay, what could we do better next time, Kim? Is that belief accurate? Just to be unconditionally loved and to see mirrored back to you, like affection and worth and value. It changed my life. And it's something I provided for everyone else. Like I was the person who was like, I'll be with you and I'm going to believe in you and I'm going to hope for you. And I gave everything to everyone. I just didn't know how to do for myself. But to have it actually reciprocated back to me was life-changing. But it was a progressive opening up till I was willing to say the things that I thought were worse. I was willing to talk about suicide. I was willing to talk about, some of my addiction loops or my program loops or sexualized behavior. It just took time to realize I'd be fully received regardless of what they saw.
Talk to me about the progression of opening up. What was the conversation that you were having in your head to allow yourself to open up to your coach?
Yeah, I don't even know if there was so much of a conversation. I think there was a desperateness. There's growth and transformation is only going to come when you're desperate. when you're willing to not only be aware of the way you're behaving, relating, or believing, but you're no longer willing to settle for the status quo of continuing in that belief or behavior or emotional disposition. So there was like a desperateness of like, there's no way, but somehow people are my way to get out of this world of internal torment, because that's how I would describe it. It was a world of internal torment that I was trapped in. And if telling them is going to somehow shatter the shame, is going to bring to light what was hidden in darkness, is going to destroy everything that was ingrained in me as a child so that I can be free and not bound to a master and who they said I would be or who I was, then I needed to open my mouth. So it was more just this like fuel of desperation. And over again, I communicate a lot in voice memos. That's kind of one of the ways I have my coaching session. I share life through voice memos. And I remember just sitting there like, oh my God, are they still going to talk to me after I say this out loud? And just still right there, engaged in my story, voice memoing back, speaking truth in life and identity. So it was a desperation that drove me to be vulnerable and transparent. And so many people, especially in the professional world, it's so easy to put on a facade and it's so easy to put on a front, and deep down we're suffering. Like deep down in our own internal torments, the number of people with anxiety and depression and, challenges in their relationships and domestic violence and people pleasing, like we are just a society of people who are suffering and don't know our worth, value, and identity, and yet too afraid to ever let anyone know that what we're presenting to the world is a semblance of a lie and we're not really okay. But the minute we let people in and we let them see and we let them know us and we just kind of vomit all of our brokenness and they could still see our beauty, that's when the growth happens. That's when the freedom happens. That's when the healing happens. That's when we can stop pretending we're something we're not, and we can start becoming who we're really created to be, and we can live out of that fully and authentically. Because that's something I never knew. I wasn't authentic in the living out of what I was saying. I could preach and teach it all day, but I couldn't authentically live out the truth of what I longed for others to know and have themselves.
How did it feel the moment you were able to finally open up?
Horrible. I mean, it's freeing. There's a relief. There's a relief. I'll say that. It's definitely a relief. Like even now, like even talking to you, it's been, especially the last year of being willing to be transparent and being willing to be vulnerable and being willing to just share a little bit more and more and more my real story, because I get asked every single meeting, well, what's your story? And I have my lovely little crafted narrative that lets you know I had some bad things happen to me, but doesn't really let you know. And so to be able to say the things I'm most ashamed of without fear of judgment, shame, disqualification, there's a relief to it. And at the same time, there still is a little bit of it. It's like, oh man, they're going to really know. And are they going to question my ability to lead? Or are they going to question my competency? Or are they going to question my, my relationship with Jesus? That's a big one for me. Are they going to question those things when they see the truth of who I am? And then that's when I just have to settle and rest on, man, the glory of what God did in my life. Like it's a glory. It's like that's what I have to sit there with him. It's like, man, you did a work of wonder that is magnificent if people really saw where I came from and where I am now. Because those moments of despair and no hope and to where I'm now are really beautiful.
You talked about mapping your system of survival. What did that process actually look like?
Yeah, so it was long. and tedious. So all of us, we have hardwired tracks of behaviors based on the way we view the world, the way we learn to navigate the world. So the way we relate and interact with the world is based on what we were raised in, our worldview. So the relationships we had, the culture we lived in, the environment we were raised in, and then our traumatic experiences. And so then we form subconsciously a philosophy about life and walk out these pattern behaviors autonomously and subconsciously. So, for example, if I had a negative experience with a dog without would invite me, and then I know I need to run and hide or call my mom, I'm going to play this track of behavior every time I have a stimulus or I have a relationship with a dog, okay? So all of us, we have these tracks of behavior, and we have like a stimulus or a trigger and then a response. And so for me, I had networks of ways I survived life. And I had networks of parts of me that were subdivided through trauma, structurally engineered, and almost dismembered through programming. And so it was this navigation of I have this whole network of how I relate to the world. And how do I figure this out? So it was just moment by moment, I recognize I'm having this type of behavior. Okay, what caused that behavior? I pause long enough to be aware of what caused that behavior. What's the underlying belief system? What does that go back to? And I would literally track it back to something I survived or something I suffered or a way I had to learn to behave to get a core need. And so I tracked all my people-pleasing patterns, all my freeze, shutdown patterns. I learned to recognize when I would go like high into overwhelm or anxiety or almost like hyper energy, right? We're like disconnecting, we're up here, or like down into despair and heaviness. I learned to just be able to like moment by moment be aware of how my body was feeling when I was pulling back relationally, where I was trying to make sure I was keeping everyone happy. And I would literally track the stimulus or trigger to the belief, to the behavior, and kind of the loop of it. And I had to do this through the way I learned to protect, the way I learned how to meet my needs, the way I was programmed, and do that with a whole network of just who I am as a person. And I still have to do it today because I don't think we ever really arrive. We're always going to have like the residue of what we lived and experienced that tries to affect our present. And so that's been just this drive of I will be the master of my own life. I don't have a master anymore. I am mine. I'm the governor of my life. And so I will master my emotions and I will master my behaviors and I will master my environment and my relationships with my kids. Like I will be the one who dictates and determines how I respond. And most of us all day long don't realize that we're responding in a way that isn't true to who we really are as a person, isn't true to how we really want to behave, isn't true to our worth. But it's just kind of this autonomous response of how we've just learned to relate and keep ourselves safe or get our needs met. And so a lot of it was just awareness. And that took a lot of learning to calm my body down. The panic I wrestled with was severe. I had years where the only way to calm it down was substance use all day to try to keep my body calm because panic was just housed inside of me. So learning to calm my body, confront the narratives I believed about myself, reframe those narratives with truth, and then learn a new way. So much of it is, this isn't helpful anymore. This is harmful. This isn't honoring your worth. This isn't, getting you what you really want in life. This isn't beneficial for you anymore. And so what's a new way to be safe and take care of ourselves in a way that's life-giving? And so it was just a very long journey. And I'm training now. I've built out models. I've built out curriculum. I'm actually building out an in-home coaching curriculum that walks individuals to the sustainable governance of their lives. It's a systematic process to walk to systemic wholeness. And it all was birthed from my like inner healing journey of the things that I suffered and survived. So it's really beautiful to see that it was worth it. I guess. Like I can look today and be like, man, it was worth it because I'm creating a path for others to follow, rewiring mindsets, reconfiguring the systems of how we interact and relate to the world, all rooted in hope, power, belief, and worth. and belonging. And so, yeah, it's just kind of a progressive, kind of an ending journey, to be honest.
Do you still deal with panic attacks now?
I have panic in my body every day.
Okay. And how do
Um,
you handle that now versus back then with substance abuse?
yes. Yeah, I definitely was a rough case when it came to panic. I would feel it. I need to make it go away. And just because there was no way out, like in what I was raised in, you just sit and you suffer and you're forced to sit and suffer in harm. And so when panic would start, there's just no way out. So my only way is to medicate and numb. And I did that perpetually for whenever I would have a flashback. I just didn't know any other way. And so it was just definitely a survival response. But today, yes, I still feel panic in my body every day. And I'm at the point now where, I can just breathe through it. I can feel it. I can recognize I'm not there. I'm in my present. No one and nothing's going to hurt me. I'm safe. It feels awful. It's in those moments you feel like you're going to die. You have the flashes of the memories. But I can be having a meeting with you right now. Body on fire, nervous system overwhelmed, and no one will ever know because I mastered it. And there's there's like a soberness to it that it's just kind of part of who I am, that I'll probably always carry that in my body. But there's like a glory in it that it doesn't define any of my interaction with life now. And some of the strategies I use are because a lot of times with panic, it's just you feel it in your body. It's just a somatic response. You can do nothing about it. And just recognizing it's going to come and go like a wave. That's one thing. I use a lot of imagery. It's going to come like a wave. It's going to reside like a wave. And I'm just going to stay calm in the midst of it. Another thing is a lot of times it comes with memories. And so one thing I've trained myself to do is that every time a negative memory comes into my frame, I'll do two things. I will, if it's a person, I will replace immediately. Almost like, when a fly comes and you you zap it, right? You got to zap a fly when it comes, or a frog, catches it. I'll replace that negative memory with a positive one. So if it's a person who hurt me, then I'll replace it with the eyes, like the face of someone who loves me. If it's a negative experience, let's say it's with some way I suffered, I will replace it with a new memory of that thing that was the point of pain or harm, with a memory or a relationship or a correlation with how that thing is a good thing or a positive. So I call them golden memories. So I'll just grab these little memories, these little experiences, these little moments, and replace them. And then it just washes over me that I'm loved. That's all I really needed. I'm just loved and I'm held and I'm safe and I'm not alone and I'm grateful. There's just a level of then gratitude that just floods me, and that almost overrides the panic, just the gratitude for what God's done in my life, for the gifts he's given me. Because that's what I see. It's beautiful now, because I had years where one reason I didn't talk about my story was it's just it's like pain. What's your story? Pain. That's it. There's no good in it. It's just pain. And today I'm like, wow, all I see is gratitude for what God did and where he brought me and who I am now and what I've overcome and the victory I've seen in my life. And I can sit in gratitude rather than despair. So that's how I manage panic today. It's not, I used to hate when people were like, well, just breathe and just look at 5 things in the room. There's all these little things you can do to calm your body down. They suck. They don't work. They just didn't work. None of them worked. I remember sitting there talking to Jesus okay, I'm going to try these things. They don't work. I'm going to grab a shot. Literally, these don't work. And then him teaching me new tools and ways that work. And now I can do those little practices. I still don't like them, but the gratitude overrides everything else in my life now. And I see everything through the lens of gratefulness and blessing rather than loss and harm. So.
Now, I remember you mentioning to me that every morning you have a routine that you do from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. Tell me about that.
Yeah, this is another place of desperation for me, because I don't wake up because I'm disciplined. I wake up because I'm desperate. Because I hit 7 a.m., I start my day with the kids and work, and running neighborhoods and going to meetings. And for years, I actually started this when I was in high school because the turbulence of suffering inside of me was so great. I had to do something about it. And that's where I dove into the heart of God, even as a young teenager. So that 5 to 7 is something, I mean, I'm going on 2.5 decades of that is a holy time for me where I dove into my heart and I dove into healing. I dove into God reframing the narratives I believed, which is why I've been so high functioning most of my life. Because his wisdom and his eyes and his truth is the only thing that has grounded me and kept me here, literally here, and living out who I'm created to be. So 5 to 7, and then the last number of years of mapping my system, of working through recovery, of being authentic to who I really am, of fighting for my worth of value, of leaving an abusive marriage. Those times were even more holy. I would sit there for hours and just, okay, I responded this way. Where did that come from? Or I had this flashback. I got to get myself to a place of calm. Or I'm noticing me reacting a certain way or engaging this certain way. It was like if I saw it, then I had to dive into it. And it wasn't easy. I mean, so challenging, so many tears, so much anguish, so much anger. Like the anger I wrestled with at God. Because, all the beliefs that he allowed this and, trying to believe that he saves me or he keeps me safe was like, I just can't see it. And that's where we would just wrestle it out till I could see a truth. And I could then agree with it and believe it. Like little things, like it sounds so silly, but like I remember sitting there in my 5 to 7 times and being like, revelation is I'm not a robot. Crazy, right? But in what I was raised in, you are literally indoctrinated with a belief system that you're turned on and off with a button and you're like a robot and a certain part of you comes out to play and performs in a brothel. So like sitting there going, oh my God, I'm not a robot, which means I have a brain, which means I can make decisions, which means I can say no, which means I can decide what I want, which means I can determine the narrative of my life and the way I live my life and my actions and behaviors. And if I have a brain, then I have a will, right? Like just going on this like track of these things that the healthy, mature parts of me know intuitively, like of course, but the broken parts of me, those who know trauma, there's family systems and inner children, that whole world, that new suffering has no clue that I have a brain or no clue that I can move or no clue that I'm my own. So doing all that inner trauma work, like really, I walked myself through like trauma healing from that 5 to 7 a.m. window. That's because I didn't trust therapists. They weren't very helpful for me. There's a lot of great therapists. I love the Trauma Healing Center with Stephanie Hinman and Melissa Finger. But that just was not an avenue or route that was helpful for me because of the nature of how I was harmed. And so, yeah, that's when I dove into it. I saw it. I had to address it. I had to face it. And I would unwire and then rewire my mind. And then I would put a strategy in place. So it wasn't just seeing a truth and then agreeing with a truth, and then I would make a strategy. Okay, so then what are the habits, rhythms, and routines that I'm going to put into place that govern my whole life? What are the principles of living? What are the patterns of behaviors? And then that created the pathway that I would then align my life. And I just did that over and over and over again. And even recently, I'll still see little things like, oh my gosh, this still affects me. Like this still there's a residue, and it's with all of us in some manner or fashion. And I'll have to check myself and to do kind of the same process all over again. So my whole life, I love to write strategic plans. I design models and curriculum. So I did that with myself. Like every new pathway I was creating for my life to live out was a strategic plan for how I was going to engage and relate, interact in the world, rooted in a new belief system. So that was my 5 to 7 a.m. time. And then that was upheld with accountability from my support system so that someone else knew what I was committing myself to walk out and then could kind of be the guardrails and, mentorship, accountability, things like that. So
So when you go through your 5 to 7 a.m. strategy, are you doing this all in your head, or are you writing this down? Like, how are
Mhm.
you keeping track of it?
Yeah, so I definitely write it down. I have like a billion little journals. And I walk. For those who know me, I'm walking and pacing barefoot during my 5 to 7 a.m. times. It's all written down, and then I take every strategy I've learned and then I put it into curriculum. So that's actually where this in-home curriculum I'm designing has literally come from my 5 to 7 a.m. like quiet times, Jesus times, prayer times, whatever you want to call them. And so just models, thought processes, it's all being put into a curriculum that I hope to complete within the next year.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing. You said your conversations with Jesus were what specifically worked for you. How do you translate that for someone with no faith framework?
Yeah, I think being able to translate it for someone with no faith framework is, for me, it's being to them who Jesus was to me. So, for example, I remember when I was really wrestling with addiction and not numbing or running from my pain and being able to sit in it with him. I remember, relapsing again. And I remember him just sitting with me and he was like, Kim, I'm so proud of you. Like, you only see the one time you relapsed because I'd been doing pretty good. I see the 100 times you walked by a aisle of liquor. Like, I see the 100 times, the moment by moment. You're seeing the day by day. I'm literally seeing the moment by moment when you chose me, the moment by moment when you sat in the fear, the moment by moment when you wanted to give up. Like, I'm so proud of you, right? And that's like the compassion of God that we don't see often displayed within a church system and structure. That's the heart of a father. That's like the encouragement of a friend. And so for someone who doesn't have a faith, because actually the curriculum I'm building out is secular based with a lot of declarations and visualizations. So it's everything I learned. The principles of of living are all like faith based from my relationship with God. But who I know God to be is someone who loves me. And so being able to display to others unconditional love, unconditional acceptance, unconditional compassion, unconditional encouragement and belief and hope and motivation, and that their worth and value isn't dependent upon whatever faith construct they have, is how I do that. So I walk that out, especially in neighborhood development, community development. Everyone knows that I love Jesus, but probably 80-90% of individuals wouldn't say they're professed Christians themselves. So I would say that's how I walk that out and demonstrate it to others. And then for individuals who are literally like, God's not real, and that's cool, because we all have our own journey. Um, I would say the same principles of visualization, of being able, you believe that, let's say, you're unloved or unwanted, and being able to visualize you having worth, or someone wanting you or loving you, and then being able to declare truth. The same process is relevant, but what's healthy is when you can attach it to another human who affirms it. So for me, I attach to really literally, like, I know God, I know Jesus, I know he's real. When you've been raised in what I've been raised in. Actually, I have a brand on my foot, dedicated, betrothed to Satan, like branded with that ownership. There are certain things are real because of what you've lived in and experienced. But for others, it's just connecting to them people in a healthy community of any people, can reveal the heart of God. And then they can go on their own fun journey of just probing. I just remember that was most of my life with God. Like, if you are real, if you are who you say you are, that's my thing. I actually am writing a book called How the Fuck Is God Good? Okay. And I know a lot of Christians will have an issue with that because I'm cussing as well. But that was my cry. That was my, I know you're real because I can't deny it at this point with the experiences I've had with him. But how the fuck are you good when you allow A, B, C, D to happen and you are all powerful and you step in and you don't do anything about it? Like, I had to wrestle and navigate those questions and those frustrations and that anger, and that really just a lack of trust. And if you don't trust someone, you can't attach to them. You have this constant divide. And so that would be my encouragement for people who have no faith. Go to God with your anger and your questions and your frustrations. Be like, okay, if you're real, show me you are. Tell me, show me, let me see, because again, we have to see something to experience it, to believe it, then to agree with it, then to walk it out. So that would be for those who don't have a faith. And then I'll be honest, because I am only where I am because of my faith, and because I do believe that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. I believe that if outside of him, there is a semblance of the fullness of life that you will never find outside of him, because, man, humans, we're kind of broken. Like, we can never love enough to fill someone up. Like, we can never comfort enough to like let someone know, like, at the depth of who they are, that they have worth and value. Like, there's a gap there that if you didn't get it as a child, no one can ever really fill up those cries and those aches and those longings. Like, we can think we can, but that's why all of us scrolling our phones, numbing with this, binging on food. Like, there's a deep longing to be satisfied that nothing in life is actually filling. And we fill it with all these facades. We fill it with all these behaviors and lifestyles, but it's actually not enough. And we all know it's like deep is crying out to deep, that something is lacking and something is missing. So I do believe there's a semblance of the wholeness and the fullness of what we are meant to experience in life that we will not know until we know a man and not a system and not a church, like, and not a religion. It's outside of religion. We were never meant to be in a religious system. We were meant to be connected to a father.
Wow. You said you're still becoming. What does that actually look like day to day right now?
You know, I could give like a wonderfully crafted answer to that and pretend it's more than it's not, but it's exhausting. But yet beautiful. Like, it's this blend of like glorious and hard, because every day it's like I wake up and I see the amazing beauty of what God's done in my life. And again, at the same time, it's really, really hard because I have to be disciplined. I have to implement my habits and routines. I have to stay true to my 5 to 7 a.m. routine. I have to reach out to help for accountability. I have to be aware of like, I just like totally conformed the way I was to try to keep someone happy. And that's just another people pleasing pattern. Like, and I have to like go, like I'm still operating in ways that don't represent the full authenticity of who I am as a person, or I'm still kind of, being who people needed me to be because I was so ingrained in me of playing roles of performance. And so the becoming is choosing to do the work regardless of how I feel or how far I think I've come. It's choosing to believe I'm worth living a life that is not defined by past slavery and suffering. It's choosing to create pathways that will lead for others to have an abundance of life, hopefully without as much damage or wreckage as I had along the way. And it's the wrestle. Like, it really is. It's work, it's wrestle. But then it's just like this wondrous adventure. Like, it really is an adventure of like, okay, like there's a way. That's actually my philosophy in life. It's what I integrate within all our program models with Empire Dreams and in neighborhood development. There's always a way. We just got to find the way. And then it becomes a fun adventure of like, okay, these are still the challenges in my life. These are still the way my past has affected me. This is still some of my, I'm not fully mature in these areas yet. But this is going to be a fun journey of fully becoming who I'm meant to be, who I'm created to be, and walking it out free of shame and confident that I'm loved, and with people surrounding and supporting and celebrating me. So some days I'm like, this sucks. It just sucks. There's nothing fun about it. And then other days, I just sit in gratitude. And then other days I feel the soberness of the suffering. But then it just becomes this beautiful tapestry of God's glory that makes it worth keeping on.
What gets you through the days that you feel that is sucking?
I write a lot. So as actually one of my strategies to process my emotions over my overwhelm. I write out the experience I'm having in life, the internal challenges, the life challenges. So I write a lot and I post a lot. I post things you're not really supposed to post on LinkedIn because it's the authentic me. I'm not just this Kimberly who leads a nonprofit and does, community development and has like 18,000 kids in my house. Like I'm this Kimberly who also is navigating deep suffering and healing and wholeness and choosing to believe in my worth and value and my power. And so I write a lot on those days. And, you'll see some of my writings come across the screen. And then I reach out to my support network. I no longer am like afraid of being a burden. I'm like, you guys love me, And so I have no problem reaching out, sending my voice memos. I have I still have that support system. I have a very solid support system of people invested in my story and invested in my wholeness. So I reach out to them. I'm still doing the work. I actually, every 2 weeks, I meet with a specialized team who supports individuals who've experienced trafficking and ritual abuse. So you see me running the city all week and you didn't know I just had like a 4-hour trauma healing session and I'm navigating memories and flashbacks and they're not moving me. It's like my analogy is like being in a hurricane but you're not moved. And so all of that is this mixture. I still have hard days. I still have hard moments. I'm a single mom raising my kiddos now and trying to pull myself out of poverty. But I write and I talk to Jesus and I reach out to my support system and I do the work. I stick to what I've known has worked. I stick to my strategies. I stick to my routines because I'm desperate. I'm just desperate. And if I'm going to believe I'm worth enough to live life, then I'm going to live life to the fullest and the fullness of it for myself and then for others to follow. And that doesn't mean it's easy. It's hard as fuck.
What do you say to the person that's still hiding?
That's a great question. Come out of hiding. Be courageous, be raw, be willing to be seen and known. I actually speak about this a lot throughout the city. We have to be willing to let people see us. We have to be willing to let them know us and the good, the bad, and the ugly. I always say the beauty and the brokenness, because that's the only pathway to freedom. That's the only pathway to healing. That's the only pathway to not being crippled by a facade of people pleasing and performance where we're presenting something we're not. And we're suffocating and we're dying and we're drowning within it. We have to let the light in. And I promise you, you will be received. It doesn't matter what you think your position is or your status or your prominence. People who love you will receive you. They'll see you, they'll receive you, they'll believe in you, and then they'll walk with you on a journey of support so you can become who you're created to be outside of the negative beliefs, the negative behaviors, the barriers that we don't want to tell people are there because we feel like we're supposed to be here, but we're actually here, but we don't really want to let people know. But once you come to the light, people enter in and they love you and they fight for you and they don't let go of you. And it's the only way. I'll say that it's the only way. And if we had more transparency in the workplace, in the church for sure, among support groups, if we actually were real with who we are, where we are, but where we want to be and where we want to go, life will look completely different. We would not have so many, hidden coping mechanisms and broken marriages. That was a huge thing for me. I mean, you hide so much and then it destroys generations of family units when all you had to do was come to the light. And then people could enter into the story and then you could see a change. So it would change the world. It would change life. So I would just tell them be seen, unashamed and unafraid. It's the only way. And until you do that, you will continue to be in chains. I have a few tattoos, but another one on my foot is free. And when I finally realized I was enslaving myself, me not being authentic, me not sharing my story was keeping me enslaved as though I was back there still. Here I am free. I can move, I can think, I can speak. I'm in a present that's so different than my past, but I'm still enslaved and I'm enslaving myself to my story because I just won't let someone else into my suffering to walk me out. And all of us, whether we want to admit it or not, are bound and in bondage to beliefs, behaviors, or barriers that are keeping us from who we really want to be. And until we're really willing to confront that, and that you cannot do it without people. Even for me, I did it for years, just me and Jesus, la, 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 it's great. No, I was this far, I was stunned. It was like, I was stunted or stagnant because it was only so far I could come until I was willing to receive love. And love is also from people who believe in us and champion us. So come out of hiding and then wrestle with God. I would say that too. Like wrestle with God until he answers, because we need more people who are willing to wrestle with God and not just say, oh, God is good. Please? Really? Okay. No, let him show you he actually is.